Over 600 subscribers and counting. Thank you guys for watching the Mythoscope. You guys are amazing. When George Lucas wrote the original Star Wars trilogy, he took inspiration from mythology, and specifically a book called A Hero with a Thousand Faces, written by Joseph Campbell. The book essentially explains the concept of the hero's journey and how that story not only repeats itself time and time again, but why it will forever remain popular, and in turn why the original Star Wars will remain as such as well. Star Wars is a perfect example of the hero's journey and hosts a wide range of these archetypes and elements we would find in the traditional mythology, like the hero, Luke, the wise advisor, Obi-Wan, and the villain, Darth Vader, Han Solo, the helper, and C-3PO, the comic relief. Carl Jung once described these elements as archetypes, and they all worked in tandem to tell the hero's journey and to take it to its conclusion through a series of complexes or trials. The complexes Luke and the gang encounter would be Jabba the Hutt, Darth Vader, and destroying the Death Star. All of these work to test our hero and to make him stronger to finally face the ultimate evil, the Emperor. In essence, it is a good versus evil in its purest form. But that is what the original Star Wars was. A simple, pure story inspired by the old Greek and Norse myths, to show us the hero's journey, only this time it was set in space, which is probably the reason why it became so damned popular. Star Wars is a perfect combination of the familiar mixed with the new. So although the original had its faults obviously, it is essentially a mythical story. But what exactly makes something mythical? Why would I consider the old Star Wars mythical but not the new one? Well, in his book, Joseph Campbell says, a mythical story is something which feeds the soul, something for which we all hunger for. Lord of the Rings, Secret of NIMH, Never-Ending Story, Judge Dredd, and of course Star Wars are examples of stories which not only show the hero's journey, but stay with us long after we've watched it. It's the reason why they are considered timeless. It's not because they don't make references to pop culture, but because their stories will continue to feed new generations. These stories have substance, and they tell the traditional good versus bad. They show the trials of the hero, and finally they let good prevail. But we don't necessarily want to see the good guys win. We want to see them win after they've nearly lost, after they've been broken and beaten, after they've made mistakes, after going over all the complexes in their journey. Then we want to see them rise up, find the power within, and win. We want to see them deserve the win. And at the end of Return of the Jedi, one thing no one can deny is that Luke deserved that happy ending. And that is why it's so damn satisfying. And also the reason why the ending to Mass Effect, the game from BioWare, ended in such a disaster. The three-part series had all the elements of the hero's journey. The character went through all the trials, fighting the collectors, building the team, growing stronger. They pushed through every hell thrown at them without pause, following the classic road of the hero's journey. But then they lost. The players were unfulfilled by the story, because instead of giving them the boring or traditional ending, the writers instead decided to give them a twist. And despite it being different, interesting and complex, as some might think, it still left the majority of the Mass Effect fanbase angry and frustrated because it failed to deliver at its most essential moment, the conclusion. A twist can make or break a film. It can either add depth, making the audience think, compare and comprehend deeper layers, or it can retcon the whole story, leaving audience instead uncomfortable, duped, and even a little violated. It's a trust that's been broken, and one which won't be fixed easily. But a good ending doesn't need to be a happy one. It just needs to be satisfying. A bad ending can be satisfying, but the story has to deserve it. Which is why mythical stories usually work. They satisfy. Good or bad, the endings always satisfy. One other great factor in considering if a story is mythical is the question they pose to the audience. The original series is a combination of power and redemption. Will great power corrupt? That is the basic question. And always kind of at the back of the mind of the viewer, because Luke is gaining all of this power and you're kind of wondering, will he fall to the dark side? But then it evolves into something more. Instead asking, how much power is needed to save the corrupted? The answer at the end is of course none, which is not only different and gives depths, but also very satisfying, especially considering the villain's story. But answers can have layers. If we consider again the question of Star Wars, how much power is needed to save the corrupted, the answer could instead then be, no power is needed to save the corrupted, but we are all slaves to our own beliefs. The only way to find redemption is to reach for it. And that is why it's so damn fascinating. It's not just an answer, but it's one with depth. And that, coupled with the archetypes, elements and complexes, makes the original trilogy mythical. Now that we've established why the old Star Wars is mythical, let's consider the new Star Wars. It has the elements, the hero, Rey, the advisor, Luke, the villain, Snoke, and the trickster, BB-8. But what it has in archetypes, it lacks in complexes. Our main character, Rey, barely has any trials. She doesn't falter, she doesn't fail, there's nothing she's overcoming. So her journey has become stagnant, we are left hungry. Because we can't see the story building up to a satisfying conclusion. During all her complexes, Rey never actually faces true adversity. Try to think about one situation where it was completely hopeless. The first scenario for me would be where she is at the mercy of Snoke. And this would have worked, but then they kill him, ruining any sort of arc she might have taken with his character. Again, the morsel dangles but is pulled away at the last second, and the potential for satisfaction goes out with it. If we take the same situation where Luke was at the mercy of Jabba the Hutt, we can see his personal struggle, his failed plan, and his fight to get out of that situation. Despite Jabba the Hutt only technically appearing in one film, one can feel the tension between him and Luke, and that intense satisfaction when Leia chokes the life out of Jabba the Hutt. It's very well handled, and shows a clear arc between Jabba and Solo, a nice kind of side meal for the main course. Snoke, well, he just sort of flops in sadness, which will instantly frustrate viewers because it's much the same situation we had with Mass Effect. The conclusion to this arc was a failure because it left audiences disappointed, taking away any sort of satisfaction the moment might have given. What makes it even more frustrating is that there was clear potential for this to be great. Everything was set up and ready. But because the writers wanted to be twisty, they robbed the story of a much needed good conclusion, and in turn ours. And this is why the new Star Wars fails as a mythical story. It can't feed us because it keeps trying to be different, leaving us desperate and starving for that true hero's journey. With Rey, we badly want to see her fail. We want to see her struggle. We want to see her hurt and then stand up from that fall to fight, so that we can root for her to win. But because she never struggles, when she finally fights the villain, we will kind of hope that she will fail, because she hasn't earned a win. But the new Star Wars asks the same question, can great power corrupt? Whether this will have a satisfying conclusion, that's difficult to say. We'll have to wait for the final movie. And if that final conclusion will give the question more depth also remains to be seen. So considering all of this, we can clearly see that although cloaked in the same archetypes, fundamentally the new Star Wars is not myth, because it can't feed us and it sure as hell doesn't satisfy, and it probably won't. It's not the same hero's journey because it has to be twisty to ensure it's not boring or traditional. But if it's not mythical, then what is it? If George Lucas based his story on mythology, what did the new Star Wars writers base theirs on? Star Wars, which immediately makes it a fanfiction. I know it's a bit of a leap, but I will try and explain where this conclusion came from. To clarify, fanfiction is where you write stories set in the universe someone else created. It's like playing in the sandbox of your favorite universe. The characters, lore and setting is already there. You can just pick a few and start writing. The spirit of fanfiction is best described: the story isn't over until we say it is. At the heart of it is the desperate need for things to not end. For this video, we're going to be focusing on something I like to call the self-insert epic. This is when an author writes an epic adventure set in the canon or main universe. for example Star Wars, but where they, or at least their original character, is the main character. There are some key elements to these stories, which they all have. Number 1. The character finds out they're special. 2. They are usually more advanced or better than the heroes of the original. Then of course, because they're so amazing, everyone falls in love with them, or is at least heavily impressed and in awe of them in one way or the other. But because they're essentially writing about a character no one knows about, the author will use familiarity to help the readers get pulled into their story. They will even, to keep it familiar, follow the original plot to some extent, but they will use surprises and twists to keep you guessing. This might include killing off a character, usually one the writer created, having a twist villain, or even offing a main character they really didn't like killing Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. Finally, they will break the one golden rule of fanfiction. Respect the characters. No matter what you write, you must adhere to this. You must stick to their personality, stick to their convictions, and stick to them. OOC, out of character, is probably the biggest cursed word in fanfiction. Someone, somewhere, will be a fan of your least favorite character. And you need to respect them in your story, or people won't read it. Now I bet some of you might be asking at this point, why would people read this crap? As I stated before, fanfiction is there to keep the story going, and if something looks like it has good grammar or CGI, readers will forgive just about anything, because they just want to see the story continue. Now that we've looked at fanfiction and understand its heart, let's take everything we've learned and apply this to the new Star Wars. Let's start with the familiar imagery. Tatooine, Jakku, R2-D2, BB-8, Death Star, Starkiller Base, Rebel Alliance, Resistance, the First Order, the Empire, and then of course the things that we have seen in the original series quite a lot, like the Millennium Falcon, the Stormtroopers, wada. They are using familiarity to draw you into their story. Now let's consider the characters. Rey, a poor, humble character from a planet which resembles the main characters in the original Luke's, finds out she is the most amazing Jedi ever. Better than the original. She is perfect, she is extremely powerful, and only proves herself to be smarter and more epic than anyone else. Luke has forsaken everything he fought for in the original. Han Solo can't fix his own ship and has been killed. Leia can suddenly use the Force. These characters aren't being respected. And finally, Snoke was killed by Kylo Ren with a lightsaber as a surprise kill. The surprise twist, just to keep you off balance and make you think that you're not essentially re-watching Star Wars. The new Star Wars isn't only a fan fiction, it's a god-awful one. But it is keeping the story going by using great CGI, grammar to do so, which is why people are falling for it. I am going to clarify though, for a studio starting a new series set in a familiar universe, it's not necessarily a bad thing to use familiarity or familiar imagery to draw viewers in. But considering how these archetypes and elements can be used to tell mythical stories that shows the growth of a character, their successes and failures in a single arc, it's clear they didn't want to make the effort and just wrote the laziest story they could think of. At the heart of fanfiction is the desperate need for things to continue. No one likes to say goodbye to something we love. It's why we're still waiting for Half-Life 3, why we hope there will be a season 5 of Sherlock, or why anything Harry Potter related is almost instantly successful. We will forgive a lot if it means we can continue to live in the world and universes we enjoy. They are an escape, places we enjoy sometimes more than our daily lives. And if anyone keeps it going, whether that be through fan fictions, fan films, fan art, discussions, conventions, cosplay, or in this case Disney, we will grab it with both hands because we don't want to let it go. Which explains why fanfiction has such a large and dedicated audience. The story can't end, not as long as we're here to keep it writing. And that, my friends, is why the new Star Wars is fanfiction. It is only there to keep the story going, which should have ended in the 1970s. or early 2000s. But no one likes to say goodbye.